The Watchman of the Western Path. After several unsuccessful years of job searching, I came across a job posting for a Watcher of the Western Path. It required no prior experience, offered decent pay, and had a suspiciously short description. Looking for a watcher who can follow rules, remote location, housing provided. Apply if you're ready for night shifts. The offer seemed strange, but I was desperate. After my divorce, I was not only broke, but also without a permanent place to stay. A few days after sending in my resume, I received a reply with the job's coordinates, a 6-month contract, and a message stating that I had to begin my duties immediately. No further explanations. Arrival at the post. I arrived in the evening. My workplace was at the edge of a dense forest, along a long, straight railway track that seemed to lead nowhere. A thick fog was rolling in from the woods, and the air was getting noticeably colder. There was a train stop on the path, and beside it, a small wooden cabin equipped with a radio station, a desk, and an old lantern. On the wall, there was a train schedule and a work instruction sheet. My job was simple. Before a train arrived, I had to step onto the platform with the lantern. If no passengers were at the station, I had to turn on the white light, signaling the train to pass without stopping. If there were passengers, I had to turn on the red light, signaling it to stop. It seemed like an easy enough task. Still, I was surprised that people might actually be here. This place seemed utterly abandoned. During my journey, I hadn't seen a single house or any signs of civilization for at least 5 kilometers. Maybe tourists passed through here, I thought. To the right of the instructions, I noticed a small piece of paper pinned to the wall, a handwritten list of rules. There were 10 of them, and they looked rather unsettling. Rules of the Watcher of the Western Path. 1. The path must remain empty between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. If you see someone on the tracks during this time, do not approach or engage with them. 2. If you see an old woman crying at the station, do not approach or speak to her. Run to the cabin and lock the door. 3. If you hear knocking on the door between midnight and 2 a.m., do not open it and turn off the lights. I didn't bother reading the rest, just skimmed over them. I would later regret that. As I was still looking around my new home for the next 6 months, the radio suddenly crackled to life. Watcher of the Western Path, are you in position? Over. Already here, I replied, picking up the radio. Welcome. I'm Mark, Watcher of the Eastern Path. My station is about 3 kilometers through the forest from you. There should be an instruction sheet on your wall telling you what to do. Yeah, I saw it. Thanks. My name's Dan. Nice to meet you. Dan, do you have any questions? Actually, yes. I hesitated. There's a weird list of rules in my cabin. I read some of them out loud. Mark went silent for a few moments, then suddenly laughed. Oh, that? Probably left by the last watcher. He was too sensitive for this job. Not everyone can handle living alone in the woods. I see. If I have any more questions, can I contact you? Of course, no problem. Over and out. I switched off the radio and started getting ready for the night. The first night. Morning inspection. At dawn, I decided to check the surroundings. Maybe find tracks of whoever or whatever knocked on my window last night. But after walking 100 meters around the cabin, I realized that the forest was so thick that it was nearly impossible to pass through. Probably just a bird or some animal, I convinced myself. I went back to work as usual, signaling every train with the white light. I found it hard to believe that anyone had ever used this station. This place was completely deserted. The alarm rang, reminding me of the next train. I grabbed my lantern and stepped onto the platform. The train rushed past at full speed. I was about to return to the cabin when I noticed something. 400 meters away on the tracks stood an old woman, covering her face with her hands, sobbing loudly. Her cries echoed through the forest. A minute ago, the train had just passed there. She wasn't there before. A chill ran down my spine. Where did she come from? I froze. The second rule from the list rang in my head. If you see an old woman crying at the station, do not approach or speak to her. But what if she needed help? Taking slow steps, I moved toward her. The moment I took a step forward, her crying stopped. For several minutes, she stood motionless, hands covering her face. Then she lowered them. Her eyes were unnaturally large, with pitch-black pupils. Her gaze was wild and sane. She tilted her head back, opened her mouth wide, and let out an inhuman scream. The sound was so loud that it physically hurt my ears. I turned and ran as fast as I could toward the cabin. I could hear her footsteps behind me, chasing me down the tracks fast, unnaturally fast. I didn't dare look back. I barely made it inside, slamming the door behind me. Panting, I peeked through the window. She was gone. There was no sign of her, though I could swear she was right behind me. Still shaking, I grabbed the radio. "Mark, come in."
Yeah, Dan, what's up?
I don't even know how to explain this. I saw an old woman, but she wasn't human. She chased me, and... Mark interrupted with a chuckle.
It started, huh? Didn't think it would happen to you so soon.
"What do you mean?"
Drinking on the job already, Dan?
he said, bursting into laughter. "An old lady chasing you? That's rich." I was speechless. "I'm not drunk. I saw something." Mark kept laughing through the radio. I turned it off, shaking. Something was happening here, and I was all alone. My second night, seemed calm. No strange sounds, just the quiet forest outside. I turned off the light and lay down, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the events of the day. Then, I noticed a beam of light shining through my window, illuminating the wall beside my bed. I moved closer to the window and saw a light source slowly moving down the railway tracks toward me. But it was already past 1 a.m. This couldn't be a train. I couldn't make out what it was, but I remembered the 7th rule. If you see a light on the tracks, place a ladle of water outside the cabin door. Without hesitation, I grabbed a ladle, filled it from the water bucket in the corner, and set it outside. Then, I crouched under the window. The light grew brighter, illuminating the cabin. It became almost as bright as daylight. Whatever it was now just outside my door. Then, suddenly, the light disappeared. Darkness returned. I cautiously peeked out the window. Nothing. The tracks were empty. Something strange had happened again. I lay awake for a long time, wondering whether I should tell Mark. At dawn, I stepped onto the platform with my lantern and couldn't believe my eyes. A young woman with dark hair and a blue dress sat on the bench. Beside her was a little girl with 2 ponytails, no older than 5. Where did they come from? "Good day. Beautiful weather, isn't it?" I greeted them. The woman turned to me, but said nothing. Taking a walk through the forest, I continued, trying to start a conversation. But neither the woman nor the girl responded. They just sat in silence, waiting for the train. For the first time, I had to signal a stop. I turned on the red light. The train stopped. The woman and child boarded quietly. "This place is too strange," I muttered to myself. Afterward, I sat on the porch with a book and a cup of coffee. The towering pines provided a cool shade. I don't know how long I read, but when I lowered my book, my stomach turned to ice. She stood on the tracks, trembling. Her pale face stared directly at me. I jumped to my feet and ran inside, locking the door. I pressed my back against the wall, my breathing heavy. Everything was silent. Then, suddenly, bang, bang, bang. Something pounded against the front door hard. I had never been this terrified before. I carefully moved toward the list of rules on the wall, rereading them multiple times. There was nothing about the old woman appearing during the day, or knocking on the door. Then, the banging stopped. A deep, unnatural silence followed. I stood motionless for another 10 minutes before I dared to peek out the window. She was standing right outside the window, staring at me. Her eyes were completely black. She opened her mouth wide and let out a blood-curdling, inhuman scream. The sound was deafening. I grabbed the radio and dove under the table. The pounding returned, this time all over the cabin. Fists hammered against the walls, the door, even the wooden floor. It felt like the entire cabin would collapse. "Mark, come in, Mark!" I screamed into the radio.
Yeah, Dan, what's up?
"The old woman I told you about, she's back. She's pounding on my door, and..." Mark sighed heavily.
Listen, he said in a serious tone. You made a mistake. This is your fate now. The sooner you accept it, the better.
My stomach dropped. What the hell are you talking about?
I mean,
Mark chuckled.
you should have read the rules more carefully. I think you'll understand soon enough.
His voice was filled with amusement. What are you saying? I shouted.
You'll see.
Then he burst into laughter and cut off the radio. The pounding suddenly stopped. Silence. I sat under the table shaking. I stayed there for hours. Finally, I gathered enough courage to look outside. The old woman was gone. Taking a deep breath, I ran. I bolted down the tracks, away from the cabin, as fast as my legs would carry me. To hell with this job, I'm not staying here. I kept glancing over my shoulder, afraid the old woman was chasing me. But after running about 1.5 kilometers, something strange happened. My legs became heavy. It felt like something invisible was holding me back. The more I pushed forward, the heavier I felt. And just as I saw the end of the dark forest, just as I glimpsed sunlight breaking through the trees, everything went black. I woke up back in the cabin, lying in bed, as if I had never left. What the hell? I whispered. I turned on the radio. Mark, what is going on? I demanded. He chuckled.
You finally figured it out, huh?
What do you mean? Tell me.
All right. The truth is,
Mark paused for a moment. Then, in a mocking tone, he said,
Dan, you're dead.
His words sent a chill down my spine. What the hell are you talking about?
You heard me. You're dead. No living person ends up here.
Where is here?
This is the path between the world of the living and the afterlife. The trains carry souls to the other side. You ever notice they only go in one direction? There's no return trip.
My hands trembled as I gripped the radio. If that's true, why me?
No one knows exactly how watchers are chosen,
Mark explained.
but there's one thing all of us have in common. We all died by our own hands.
I felt my heart sink. So this is punishment?
Pretty much. We don't know who picks us for this job, but we're stuck here until it's our turn to leave.
Leave?
When the time comes, you'll be allowed to board a train, and someone else will take your place.
I tried to process everything. And the people I saw at the station?
Those were lost souls.
Mark's tone was casual, as if he had explained this 100 times before.
Let me guess, you saw a light on the tracks at night, right?
Yeah. I hesitated.
And you put water outside, didn't you?
Yes.
That light? That was the glow of innocent souls. The water helps them forget their past lives, so they can move on. That's why they appeared at the station the next morning.
And the old woman?
She's a screamer. That's what we call them here. Souls that refuse to drink the water. They go mad because they can't move on, but they can't return to the living world either. So they wander here forever.
I sat in silence, processing it all. Mark laughed.
Look on the bright side. Then you've got a lot of time to figure things out.
I didn't respond. That night, I placed the ladle of water outside the cabin once again. I hoped that the old woman would finally drink it. Unlike Mesh, still had a chance to leave.